For today's assignment, I am going to step you through how to perform the photo editing skills in Photoshop, and then you're going to use the practice file here on Schoology to perform those same editing skills and then submit it, just showing that you understand how to use the tools in Photoshop. So the list of things we're going to be doing to the image is adjusting the brightness, changing the hue or color of some of the flowers. We're going to crop the image down. We're going to expand the canvas to include a colored space so that we can add some text. And then I'm actually going to show you how to add color to that expanded canvas area. So we're actually going to start out with the original image, which you see here in the top left, and we're going to turn it into this bottom right image. And this is an example of an image that you might see on a florist's website as a product picture. So they would have the product listed with this picture, this description of what the bouquet is, and then have both of the price listings for the different variations of the product. So let's go over to Photoshop and start. So once we're into Photoshop, we're going to click the Import and Open, and then go to our photos and all photos. And you should have the photo from Schoology on your camera roll after you've saved it directly from Schoology. So the first step we need to do is brighten up this image. In order to adjust the brightness, we have to apply what's called a clipped adjustment. So over here on the right hand side, we've got our layers panel. Layers panel, just imagine that it's pieces of glass stacked on top of each other. Each element is going to have its own layer. That way you can work with that element or that design aspect separately by itself without altering any of the other components that you're adding to the image. Right now we only have one layer, so that's why you only see the picture. As we add additional elements to this photo, it'll add additional layers. We also can look at the layers in a listed format instead of just pictures. So that's what that second icon is. Third icon is going to be our layer property. So we want to actually add an adjustment to this particular layer. So once we click the layers property menu, we have our add clipped adjustment. So we'll click that button, and then we can adjust the brightness and contrast. Basically what it's doing is it's not altering the original image, it's putting a layer on top of it, which adjusts the brightness, so that if you don't like the changes that you make, you can go back and you can take that brightness adjustment off and redo it, and it won't do anything to the original image. So once I tap that button, it gives me my brightness and contrast controls. And so I want to drag my brightness somewhere into the mid-50s range. Gives it a good level of brightness to where it's not so dark and dim. If I just tap that layer properties icon again, that menu goes away. I can tap my layers panel icon, and that menu collapses. The next thing I want to do is I want to change the coloring of some of these flowers. So, for example, I think that's a carnation right up front. I want to change that and make it look like a pinkish, purpley color. But I first have to select that component of the picture, because if I were to add a hue adjustment on top of this image, it would change everything in the picture. But I only want it to change that one component of the picture. So under my layers panel, I want to make sure that I'm selected on the actual image layer. And then over here on the left-hand toolbar, I'm going to tap on that lasso tool. I'm going to tap a second time to bring up all of the selection tools that are available for me. And I'm going to tap on the third one, which is the quick selection. Quick selection just allows you to drag your cursor across any component of the image, and it quickly selects what it thinks you want to add to your selection. So I'm going to, I need to make sure that I'm clicked on the add. So whatever I drag, that's what it's going to select, and that's what it will apply the changes to. The other icon is subtraction. So maybe if I select way too much of a flower, I can go back and I can subtract some out from my selected group. Oops. Deselect. So drag it over that flower. So it looks like it selected it with dancing ants around it perfectly. And then I'm going to go into my layer properties, add clipped adjustment, and then hue and saturation. So now as I drag my hue button, one moment, let me make sure. Try it again. Add clipped adjustment, hue and saturation. All right, now it's working. So as I drag it to the left, around the -40 range, now that beigeish cream colored flower now appears as a purpley pink color. And then I want to add a second hue saturation. So I'm going to come in here. I want to zoom in. And I'm going to select this flower. So you'll notice that I've got dancing ants around and it's included some of the leaf component. So I can go and tap my subtraction icon and just highlight the green leafy portion that I don't want included in the selection. That way it'll leave that out and it only colors the actual flower. So now once I've got the correct area selected, I'll tap my layer properties, add clipped adjustment, hue and saturation, and then again, dragging it to the left is gonna change it and make it a purpley pink color. Okay, drag my... Okay, the next component is we're gonna crop this image down. So we've got some extra space along the right-hand side and the top. I wanna crop this down so that it's not so extra space. So over on the left-hand side, I'll click that crop tool and I'll drag my right side in, drag this one down so that it's hugging right around the bouquet. Also remembering your rule of thirds so that the subject or focal point is hitting on one of those intersections, and then you can see that the bouquet is pretty much hitting on that lower right focal area. So I'll click close or done. There's my new cropped image. So now the other component, oops, oh, whoops. I need to, sorry, making sure you're selected on the actual picture layer before you go cropping. My bad. Okay. There, now my hue of that one flower doesn't shift around. I need to add some additional size to this image. So I'm gonna go back into that crop menu and drag my cropping tool down a little bit. Oops, didn't mean to adjust that. All right, that looks good. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, click done. And so now you see these checkered areas. That's extra space added to my canvas. I'm actually gonna apply some coloring to that area. So right now, imagine this is a piece of glass. My picture only takes up about 3/4 of the layer of glass. That other checkered part is all see-through. So I actually want to put a layer under it so that I can add coloring to that second layer. Because if I try to add coloring to this layer with the image, it's actually going to apply the whole color to that entire layer. So making sure that I'm clicked on my picture layer, I want to click the square with the plus sign in it and add an additional layer. It's automatically going to put it above it, but I'm just going to drag that layer below my picture layer. Next, I want to grab a color that I want to apply, making sure I'm on the correct layer. And I'm going to drag my eyedropper tool around, and I'm going to grab the color of that flower in the top right. And so now with my, you'll notice my color chips, the top one, the foreground color, is the actual color of the flower that I just grabbed with the eyedropper. So I'm going to grab my paint bucket, and now wherever I tap, it's going to apply that color. So if we go back to our layers, you'll now notice that entire first layer that was blank is now filled in with that yellow color. The next step is to add my text, and that'll finish out my website image. So I'm going to click on the T typing tool, and anywhere I click, that's where it's going to add my text placeholder. So I first want to scroll down and make sure that my color is something other than that yellow foreground color that I just finished using, or else I'll have a difficult time finding my text box. So I want to actually change the text to read a classic bouquet of 12 to 15 mixed stems. Okay, so there's my product description. I also can select that text and change the font style. So you can just go through. I don't care which font you choose. It's really up to you. I'll go with this one. It looks good. And the font size at 65 is good to stay there. So I'll click done. We'll come back out. I do need to move that down a little bit. Yeah, perfect. All right, last component is adding the shapes. So making sure that I'm on my colored layer again. I want to go under the selection tool. I'll tap it a second time, and I actually want to tap the circle selection or elliptical. And I'm going to drag an ellipses color. And then once I've got my shape drawn, I want to grab my eyedropper and oop. Grab my eyedropper, and I want to fill it in. Those are all too dark with that color. So I'll take the paint bucket, tap in the circle, and voila. Okay, so there's one. And then, oops. No. Cancel. I'm back. I'm going to add its own layer so that I don't mistakenly paint bucket, tap it, deselect my transform tool so I can move it and place it just like the one beside it. All right, and then I want to add another layer. So change my color back to black. And this one's going to say classic, $60. And then deluxe, $75. Done. I can use my transform tool. Oops, gotta get on the right layer so that I can lay it out. Adjust all my fonts. All right, once you've gotten the layout the way that you like it and you're happy with it, you are ready to turn it in. So in the top right corner, we'll hit that square with the arrow to export it, and you can just do a quick export. And what it'll do is it will turn it into a JPEG, and then you can actually save that image to your camera roll and upload it to Schoology.